Have you ever felt just, completely overwhelmed trying to figure out complex government stuff, especially when it feels like there's way too much information or maybe not enough clear info? It's super frustrating.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, today we're diving deep into something a lot of you have asked about, the very latest on Canadian immigration backlogs and how processing is actually progressing.
Yeah, and what's really interesting here, I think, is the detail we've got from CanadianVisa.org's April 2025 update. It really drills down into what's happening with applications, both permanent and temporary resident.
Right. So our mission today is basically to pull out the most important bits of info from this source, give you a kind of shortcut to understanding where things stand right now, and crucially, what it means for you if you're involved in or even just curious about Canadian immigration.
Makes sense.
Okay, let's unpack this. So maybe to set the scene, let's hit that big question first. Where do things stand with the total number of applications? Has that huge backlog we were seeing, a few months back, actually changed much?
Well, as of April 2025, the source says there are over 770,000 applications still under review.
Okay, still a big number.
It is. Definitely still substantial. But the significant thing is that it's a notable drop from the 1 million that were pending back in January this year.
Okay, so a real decrease.
Exactly. And this isn't just like a random dip. The source points to a clear strategic shift by IRCC. They seem to be focusing really hard on clearing out those older files and prioritizing what they call in-demand categories.
Right, trying to target specific needs.
Yeah, to address key economic and social goals. I mean, both permanent and temporary residency applicants have faced long waits, we know that. But this trend does show a deliberate effort to, shrink that overall queue.
That move from 1 million down towards, say, 770,000, that definitely feels more like a systemic change, doesn't it? Not just clearing a few files here and there. Suggests they're actively trying to get a handle on things.
I think that's fair to say, yeah.
But now let's zoom in on something that affects so many people directly. Temporary residency. Has the data shown any, maybe surprising shifts there? How are those applications being handled?
It really has. Actually, the most notable improvement mentioned in the source is in temporary residency.
Okay.
So for study permits, processing times have apparently dropped significantly. Decisions are now, on average, being issued within about 60 days.
Wow, 60 days. Compared to what?
Well, compared to the 90-plus days we were seeing pretty consistently through 2024, so quite a jump.
This is huge.
And visitor visas, too, they're also being handled more quickly. Especially, it seems, for countries with high volumes of travel to Canada.
And why is that? More staff?
Basically, yes. The source says IRCC has deployed more officers at their global visa application centers to meet that demand, kind of boosting capacity where it's needed most.
Makes sense.
And then work permits specifically for the Global Talent Stream and International Experience Canada, the IEC program. Turnaround times are now apparently under 4 weeks.
Under 4 weeks? That's incredibly fast for immigration processing.
It really is. And it's not just about speed for speed's sake. It signals a pretty precise economic strategy. The source implies Canada's actively trying to, streamline its talent pipeline, prioritizing sectors where there are immediate, really acute shortages.
So for you, the applicant listening right now, this means if you happen to be in one of those crucial roles, you're not just applying, you're actually being sort of fast-tracked as a strategic asset for the economy.
That seems to be the idea.
That kind of predictability, knowing it could be just weeks, that can make all the difference when you're planning your life, your move.
Absolutely.
Okay, so temporary visas showing real signs of agility. But the journey to permanent residency, that's often the bigger goal, the more complex picture for many listeners. What's the data saying about progress there? Is it as, clear-cut?
Not quite as clear-cut, no. Progress in permanent residency is described more as, let's say, slow but steady. IRCC is definitely still focusing its efforts on the economic immigration streams, things like express entry and the provincial nominee programs, the PNPs.
Right, the usual suspects.
Exactly. For express entry, those draws are continuing bi-weekly, sending out invitations under both the general and the category-based selections. And the source mentions IRCC has added resources to process federal skilled worker and Canadian experience class applications faster.
That's positive.
It is. However, and this is an important bit of nuance, the source specifically highlights that some applicants from way back in 2022 and even early 2023 are still waiting for a decision.
Oof. Still waiting from 2022. That's tough.
It is. So progress, yes, but some long waits persist. Then you look at family reunification. Spousal and common law partner sponsorships have seen improvements. Processing times that are down to about 10 to 12 months in many cases.
Okay, 10, 12 months is, well, better than it has been.
Much better. But delays are still plaguing the parents and grandparent sponsorships. Many of those files are apparently waiting well beyond the sort of 20-month target mark.
So definitely a mixed bag within permanent residency then. You've got these targeted improvements, which is good news, but that difference between, say, spouses and parents and grandparents, it's a stark reminder that some areas are still facing pretty significant bottlenecks.
That sums it up well, yes. A varied picture.
Given these shifts and the overall backlog reducing somewhat, you have to wonder, how is IRCC actually, pulling this off? What role is technology playing in getting some of these times down?
Yeah, that's a key part of the story. The source details some pretty significant investments in automation and digital transformation.
Okay, like what specifically?
Well, things like advanced analytics and AI triage systems are now being used to sort applications faster.
AI triage, how does that work?
Basically, these tools help identify the complete, straightforward applications for a quicker review, while also flagging the more complex cases that need proper manual handling by an officer.
So AI isn't making the decision, it's just routing things more efficiently?
Exactly. It's about getting the application to the right person or the right queue faster. They've also upgraded the online portals, for both PR and temporary applications.
Right, I've heard about those.
Yeah, so now you, the applicant, can apparently upload extra documents more easily, track updates in like real time, and even communicate directly with IRCC officers through better messaging features.
That sounds much more user-friendly.
It seems to be. And furthermore, processes like biometrics collection, medical exams, background checks, they've apparently integrated those more tightly now, trying to reduce redundancy and speed up those final decisions. What really stands out from the source material here is this clear commitment to modernizing the whole system, getting away from the old paper-based ways.
Yeah, that definitely sounds like a big shift towards being more efficient and hopefully more transparent for applicants too. Speaking of transparency, does this tech push extend to how they communicate their processing time targets? Are those clearer now?
Well, IRCC has reaffirmed its commitment to being transparent with processing times, which, as you know, is just critical for people trying to plan.
Absolutely.
So the April 2025 update includes specific targets they're aiming for. Like, for study permits, the goal is 80% of applications processed within 60 days.
Right.
For work permits under the Global Talent Stream and IEC, the target is 80% in 30 days.
Ambitious.
It is. Visitor visas, they're aiming for 80% in 45 days. Family class PR, the goal is 80% within 12 months, and for express entry, it's 80% within 6 months.
Those are some concrete numbers.
They are. Now, the crucial caveat here, which the source points out, is that while not every single file meets these goals,
Of course.
the general trends do indicate consistent improvement across these categories. They seem to be moving closer to hitting these benchmarks more often.
That's a really important distinction, isn't it? Knowing these are targets, not guarantees, but seeing the trend is positive. It gives you, the listener, a clearer expectation maybe, helps you manage your planning, understand the potential timeline, even knowing that every case is different.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It sets a benchmark. And, if we connect this back to the bigger picture for a second, it's worth remembering that these backlog numbers, while improving, are still high, partly because of external factors too. It's not just about internal processing speed.
All right, those happening globally.
Exactly. There's been a continued high intake of humanitarian and refugee applicants, which Canada is committed to. Plus, that surge we've seen in international students and foreign workers.
Yeah, demand is still high.
Very high.
Yeah.
So those factors add significant ongoing pressure to the whole system. Canada's commitment to, resettling people from crisis zones and growing its economy through skilled immigration means application volumes just stay consistently high.
Which means?
It means processing times can still vary quite a bit, depending on the specific program you're in, and even your country of origin, as IRCC tries to balance all these competing demands and global commitments.
So it's a constant juggling act, really. Global events directly impacting the domestic system, even while they're trying to make things more efficient internally. A really complex interplay.
Very much so.
Okay, so given all these shifts, the tech improvements, the ongoing pressures, the different timelines, What does the source actually recommend for an applicant, someone listening right now? What should they be doing to best position themselves for, success?
Right, the practical advice. Well, the number one recommendation from IRCC, according to the source, is really basic but crucial. Ensure your submission is absolutely complete and accurate.
Sounds simple, but I bet it trips people up.
All the time. The source stresses that missing documents, using outdated forms, or having incomplete personal history sections that can significantly delay processing. It's like the main bottleneck caused by the applicant side.
Okay, so dot your I's and cross your T's, basically.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
They also suggest considering using authorized representatives like immigration lawyers or consultants, especially if you're navigating a complex situation, or maybe your personal circumstances aren't totally straightforward.
Get professional help if needed.
Yeah. And crucially, IRCC advises checking your application status online regularly. Use the portal, but, and this is important, avoid sending duplicate submissions or inquiries. That apparently just clogs the system and can actually slow things down for everyone.
Good tip. Don't panic and resubmit.
Exactly. And respond promptly to any requests from IRCC. If they ask for another document or clarification, get back to them quickly. That definitely speeds up decisions.
Makes sense. Keep the ball rolling.
And one last specific point. If you're already in Canada waiting for your permanent residency decision, it's vital to maintain a valid temporary status.
Ah, yes. Don't fall out of status while waiting.
Right. The source specifically mentions things like bridging open work permits and extensions. Using those tools can help you avoid major disruptions in your employment and housing while you're waiting for that final PR decision.
That's a really powerful reminder, isn't it? While IRCC is making these big strides with tech and targets, your own proactive approach, your attention to detail, that remains incredibly influential in how smoothly your immigration journey goes.
Absolutely. Applicant preparedness is key.
So let's try and wrap this up. What does this all mean for you listening today? We've seen that Canada's immigration backlog, well, it is decreasing. That's a positive trend we've been watching for, right?
Positive movement.
There have been some pretty significant strides in processing times, especially for temporary residency study, visits, some work permits. Permanent residency is seeing maybe steadier gains, even though some bottlenecks are still there.
So steady, yeah.
And underpinning a lot of this progress seems to be these tech-driven improvements IRCC is rolling out.
That seems to be the driver, yes. The overarching insight here, I think, is that IRCC's current strategy isn't just about chipping away at a backlog number. It feels like they're trying to build a more intelligent, maybe more adaptive immigration system for the future.
Right.
And for applicants, for you, this means being proactive, using those digital tools they provide, and understanding how IRCC's priorities are shifting. It's not just helpful anymore, it's probably becoming essential for a smooth process.
Being an informed applicant is more important than ever, which leads us to a final thought, maybe something for you to mull over. As Canada keeps trying to balance its deep commitment to humanitarian efforts with its clear economic growth goals, all driven by immigration, how might this ongoing evolution of its processing technology and its policies continue to reshape the global landscape of migration? Could Canada be setting maybe a new kind of standard for how other nations handle immigration in the future?
That's a really interesting question to consider. How will technology change the game globally?
Something to think about.